I'd like to tell you a story about how my kids think my work as a research professor is some of the most boring work around, and hopefully you'll get a chuckle out of it. And then from there, you will hopefully learn how to deal with some of the boredom that we go through as researchers. And hopefully, this is going to walk you through and make you feel a little bit better by listening to it. So, I do a lot of research. That's my job. I do mostly research. A lot of people don't understand that. And then whenever it's time for take your kids to work day, we do that in the state that I'm in, and we do the take your kids to work day. My wife is a veterinarian, and I am a professor, and I learn stuff. I understand stuff within a business school. And one of the most funny things is every year now. So I took my kids to school once for the take your kids to school day or take your kids to work day. And they were there about 45 minutes and they were bored out of their minds. I thought it was the worst thing that they've ever done. All they do is they sit in front of a computer. I showed them my computer desk. They spun around on the table, on the chair. And then after that, we did a ride on the city bus that goes around my university. And that was the entire day. There's a lot that goes on at a university, but a lot of it is extraordinarily boring. Now, every time they take your kids to work day, everybody wants to go to my wife's work because it's so much more exciting. They get to actually interact with clients and talk to people. If you've ever been at my wife's work, it's extraordinarily busy. There is a lot of noise. There's lots of people. There's animals all over the place. Um, and the comparison between the two is just so stark. And it is completely night and day, right? Like here I am, they get to see my work and they see it's extraordinarily boring. All I'm doing is sitting in front of a computer all day. And then they go to my wife's work, which is incredibly busy. There's dogs, there's blood, there's guts. It's just, it stinks, like all that kind of stuff. And they have this very stark contrast. So every time that they do the take your kids to work day, they never want to go to my work anymore. They're so bored of what they actually do. In fact, I've got people that I know that they use it as a threat. They're like, um, "This is what happens when you choose this particular career," and so it motivates their kids to not go and to become a professor. It's really really funny. And then like sad in a lot of ways too, right? Like extraordinarily sad. Um, but so how do we deal with the actual boredom of it, right? So if you look at from the outside, this is part of the problem is that a lot of people don't understand it. And when I say, hey, I only teach like a couple of courses a year, like my sort of contract rate is like 4 courses a year, people like freak out. Um, but I spend most of my time actually doing research and writing, and that's why I actually built the Reciprocity Project. Was in the Reciprocity platform is that I spent almost all my time doing that, and it's extraordinarily difficult to actually spend your time doing this, right? And this turns out to be one of like you will find out everybody that goes in the career they kind of flake out after a couple of years. They're really excited after a year. Maybe they're really excited at a year, but then at 2 years they're frustrated, and then they kind of are like, I'm done with this. This is not what I signed up for. How do you deal with this, right? Like, what is the problem here? So the problem is that we have really terrible feedback mechanisms often. They're not clear. Um, that the work itself tends to be very isolating. I'm by myself. In fact, if I'm loud, which sometimes I try to be a little bit more louder in my office just to like, so I'm not bored, but I'm disturbing everybody else and everybody else gets mad, right? So, how do you actually deal with this sort of social isolation that's always in your head, all of these kind of things? I think the key thing, at least for me, is self-forgiveness. And this is like something that I've had to work on repeatedly. It's a lot of just acknowledging the fact that this is like miserable, right? I call I call the isolation, the loneliness, the depression that you get from being by yourself is like that is an industrial hazard of the career of being a research academic. And maybe that there's some other ones that you go into in the hard sciences where it's a bigger lab, but you still have to spend a great deal of time by yourself. And it's extraordinarily isolating. So, the key thing, at least for me, is a lot of self forgiveness. It's acknowledging a lot of this stuff and letting all this stuff kind of bubble up. Whereas before, I would have been like, no, I'm tough, I'm strong, I'm this like masculine kind of thing. But now I acknowledge it, and then from there, I know that there are certain moments that I can do with this and I have to leave, right? Like I can't do this all the time. I need to take time for other things where I get social interaction. And if it's too much time and people perceive it as too much time that I'm getting social interaction or, I'm getting exercise, I got to tell them in my head, and I apologize for everybody that's listening. I got to tell them, screw you, right? Like, screw you to the rest of the world. I need this. If I don't get this, if I don't have these things, and I am going to end up in a really, really bad state. So there's only so much work that I can do that is socially isolated. There's only so much work that I can do that's in my head. And then I have to do things that are much more enjoyable, right? Like it's like imagine yourself as a coal worker, right? And there's only so much time that you can spend in the coal mine. Like years ago, they would have just stuck you in the coal mine and told you to work for 18 hours a day. And most of those people would have died within a matter of years, right? Like it's a very dangerous and hazardous job. Now, what they would do is say, hey, you go down there for a bit, do a little bit of your time, and then come back and recuperate from this. You need as much time, you need to sort of balance that. And I treat this as that, right? Or if I'm in a position where, or I'm in a location that is too lonely, and I start feeling that sort of spidey sense, and you start to feel it, I gotta leave. I gotta go find something else. I gotta go do something. So it's the same thing as like when it's the same thing as studying. You can't study all the time by yourself, and you can push everybody away. You eventually lose it. Like MDs don't stay in the research career that long because like they are studying all the time and they want to get out of that. You start to climb, you start to feel like gross inside your body. And I want you to sort of practice these kind of things where you are doing not only self forgiveness and meditation and all those kind of things that are really lovely, or just practicing that boundary setting in your mind of like if people are giving you that eye, you walk by them. I was going to say another word, but you just walk by them and you're just like, you know what? I need this. I don't care what you're saying. This is important to me. This is my thing. And I'm going to do this. And if it looks like you're unproductive and all that kind of stuff, you secretly give them the middle finger in your head and you walk by and you have that like I'm real super grumpy now. I'm extraordinarily grumpy now. I used to be like, oh, they're well intentioned and all that. No, they're not. They're, judging you. And you have to interpret that in your head of like, hey, I am doing my thing. I need to do this. This is important to me, or else I am going to get sick. You literally will get sick and need to manage the stuff and then keep going. So I try to balance these things as much as I possibly can. And I also, another key thing, and I'm always looking for people, collaborators and stuff that have this same kind of thing. And I only want to be around people that are nice. I only want to be around people that, enjoy laughing and enjoy being a kind person. And that is not like, you know, go. It literally makes me want to vomit inside when there is people that are like so gung ho about success that they forget about the rest of the world. I need a little bit of both. I am really, like, if you met me, I'm very motivated and to accomplish things. Obviously, you've seen that, but at the same time, I know when I've had enough and I need to go do things and interact with the world and feel good about the world. And so these things are really, really important to me, and I try to balance those. And that's what you're going to feel inside. And if you miss deadlines, and if you don't show up for something that is important, all of those things, practice that self forgiveness and just say, you know what, just wasn't for me at this time. There is so many opportunities to learn, but you have to be okay with taking a step back and saying, you know, it's just not for me at this time, and I apologize. This is just not working out for me. So everybody, and this is why I know, like, this is really tough because even my kids, they see what I do and they're like, no, no, not really. It's not for me. I'm gonna go do something else. So I encourage you to practice this inner strength, encourage you to find your thing and practice just loving on yourself as much as you can. And that means if you get those spidey senses that something is not right, um, really correct it, really go in that direction, and find and build your community so that you can do good in this world. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.